What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and to continue my brand new series of classic movie reviews, I'm here to state the controversial in that Akira Kurosawa's Sanjuro is no perfect movie. And it follows 9 samurai who are trying to start a rebellion against a corrupt government clan. But when this clan kidnaps their sensei, they reluctantly decide to recruit a ronin to help them lead the way, rescue their sensei, and bring peace and justice to this village by taking down the government clan once and for all. And I mentioned in my Rashomon review that I didn't really see that many of the visual trademarks that you would normally associate with Akira Kurosawa, and that was kind of one of the bigger disappointments about the movie for me personally, especially the one technique that he uses where in certain scenes he puts all of his actors in the exact same frame and stages them in a way to kind of resemble shapes. That is a theme that is very prevalent in this movie and adds a lot to the visuals and the storytelling. Almost each shot of the samurai has them sitting or standing in a circle discussing their battle plans. So whenever they discuss any setbacks that they have to overcome, we see all of their reactions in the exact same frame. And seeing 4 or 5 people, and in most cases all 9 of them, be so angry and upset by the setbacks that they have to deal with, it really lets you know how high the stakes are and how big of a conflict they're up against, as opposed to providing exposition monologue after exposition monologue of the conflict itself. And something that I noticed about halfway through is that they differentiate between the samurai and the ronin by having the ronin sit in the foreground in a corner of the frame. Meanwhile, the samurai and their circle are in the background in the other side. And there are a lot of visual metaphors and storytelling metaphors that you can interpret from that one decision. One of them being that the ronin is an independent thinker who's learned the hard way how to solve tough decisions by himself, or has learned it from his previous master, which is something that these samurai are in desperate need of. They're inexperienced warriors, they've never solved a conflict without their master, and because some of them feel as if now's their time to make independent choices, this Ronin is there to shoot down all of their plans, because chances are he's tried those plans before. He's seen people die because those plans are stupid to begin with. He won't flat out say it, but just him hinting at it makes the one leader of the samurai know for a fact that they're inexperienced and that they need his input. But the separation of the samurai and the ronin can also elevate the one thing that the samurai have an advantage of as opposed to the ronin, because once they rescue civilians, once they have this particular hideout, they let in civilians into the samurai circle, but the ronin stays in his own corner, and that's a huge implication that he's lonely. He's afraid of letting people into his own life versus these inexperienced, youthful warriors who have incredibly strong and loyal bonds to each other and to the civilians that they're devoted to protecting. And I think it's because, well, I don't think it's because, they flat out say that this Ronin has lived a violent lifestyle and that it's the one thing that really haunts him. It's the one thing that he's afraid of, especially when this one woman that they rescue offers her wisdom and guidance to him in particular. And it's the one time where he stops having this sarcastic smile and starts to frown and really think about his past. And you can tell that it really affects him, because even though he won't admit it, he'll encourage the other warriors as they're breaking into the fortresses, as executing their plans, trying to rescue their sensei, that he's trying to encourage them to use their wits as opposed to using their swords. As they say throughout, the best sword is the one that stays in its sheath. And that's actually what makes the action and the battle sequences a lot more intense. Because they can't kill anyone because it would leave behind tracks, or it would lead them to basically commit more crimes as they're trying to start a rebellion peacefully. It actually makes the scenarios a lot trickier to get out of, and the characters have to use a lot more creative techniques in order to warn each other of impending doom, to try and outsmart their enemies without having to draw their swords, and it leads to some exciting but also kind of hilarious sequences, because this was a surprisingly funny movie. There's some comic relief from this one hostage who learns things through their rebellion and starts to take to his side, but he still acts like a hostage, and it was funny. I was really surprised by how funny it was. And as for the action itself, if you've seen Seven Samurai, you know how Kurosawa directs action, you know how good it's gonna look. He films it in steady, wide, longer takes that make you see that it is really the actors doing their own swordplay. Some of it is a little outdated in terms of choreography, where you can tell as they're slashing each other, their shirts aren't even ripped as opposed to them bleeding. There are one or two sequences that feature blood, but it's for sequences that really sell the themes of the movie that violence is not the immediate solution, using your wits to get out of trouble is. So, for that end, I understand, and it was typical from the time period to shoot action sequences like that, but it doesn't really change the fact that they're really fast paced, exciting, and you care a great deal, not just because the choreography is cool to look at, but because these characters have been using their wits for so long, but there are situations where they can't use their wits, they have to use their swords, and that's kind of what makes each fight scene feel necessary. They never overstay their welcome, they're not extended every 5 minutes just for show. Once or twice it would have been nice if they did extend it for show, but they're as long as they need to be. Now, this is a movie where character depth is more about the things that are implied as opposed to the facts that are confirmed. And for the Ronin, it works the most because he's just that mysterious of a character. You get the sense that he wishes he had people in life that he could depend upon, and chances are he can't depend upon them because they've either left him because of how violent he was or because they're dead. It's not very clear how many people, how many lives he's lost, how many lives he's taken. All that really matters is that he's shaken by it and he's trying to avoid these scenarios as much as possible. But I also really like that he's an anti-hero who doesn't have to be talked into helping with their cause. He overhears their cause, knows how stupid they are, and volunteers himself to be their leader because he knows for a fact that they need it. He knows for a fact that if he leaves them behind, even if he doesn't know what happens to them, he's going to keep imagining possible scenarios of all of them dying, all of their families dying, so many innocent lives being hurt, and he's not willing to take a chance on that. It's an anti-hero that doesn't follow the typical cliches and conventions, but is still really interesting because of how mysterious of a person he is. But as for the other 9 samurai, it's so hard to tell one of them apart from another because you don't really learn anything about them as people. There aren't really that many implications about them as people other than the fact that they're clearly so inexperienced that without a master they have absolutely no idea what to do. In fact, the first scene, the Ronin barges in and says, hey, you're completely surrounded, you guys are fucked without me. And it leads to the first really exciting sequence, but that is really the problem with these characters. It takes them a really, really long time to understand just how important this Ronin's leadership is to them, to the point where, without spoiling the ending, I didn't really like the way it wrapped up. It's one of those things where a character has to leave the others behind, and it didn't really make sense for me personally. I get that the group themselves are supposed to be interesting as a group as opposed to their individual characteristics, but only one of them is even given a name. I don't even remember what that name is. In fact, there's one character who, I'm not even kidding when I say this, the others refer to him as Young Boy. He's not given a name. In fact, I kept joking to myself that these characters probably didn't even know this one samurai's name anyways. It just seemed weird. And the other issue is the villains themselves are pretty underdeveloped and boring. There are actual villains as opposed to Seven Samurai where it's just a group of bandits who we know absolutely jack shit about. But with Sanjuro, the villains in this movie mostly just sit around in a triangle discussing their plans. We really don't get to see them do anything corrupt. We don't get to see them interact with this kidnapped sensei. There's no cat and mouse game between them and the sensei, which was a huge missed opportunity for me. As per usual with some action movies, the best villain is the henchman who's there not really to fight for any political or financial purpose, just because he loves fighting, he loves having a challenge, and if anyone questions his reputation, he'll be the first person to draw out his sword. But they don't even give him that many moments to be that kind of henchman, and it was a bit of a letdown for me personally. The side characters and the villains are underdeveloped, and not gonna lie, I felt like you could have given them 15 or 20 more minutes in order to flesh them out, but it doesn't really change the fact that Sanjuro in the end is still a really good samurai movie. The actor who plays Kikuchiyo from Seven Samurai is the one playing the Ronin, and he gives a much more subdued performance that relies more on expressions and body language and the things he doesn't say, as opposed to these insane, over-the-top outbursts that tell you everything about him. It's a risky change of pace, but I'm glad they took that risk. But yeah, Sanjuro is well acted, it does have some fun and exciting fight scenes, and the themes about using wits over weapons is a really interesting theme to cover in a samurai movie. And for all those reasons, I'm going to give Sanjuro a 4 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you have seen Sanjuro, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. Be sure to let me know how it's actually pronounced, which people get names wrong all the time. Deal with it. Be sure to stay tuned for more classical reviews, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.